Cold today, and therefore you're seeing me in the dining room rather than upstairs in my unheated Zoom studio. I thought I'd do that, and I got a green screen, was going to put something up there, but that's not going to work. So anyway, what I want to talk about is welcoming people, and I'm going to focus on Christmas Eve, but everything I have to say applies anytime, any service, any event, doesn't matter. Just when a person comes for that you don't know, it doesn't even have to be the first time. Just somebody comes that you don't know, how to make them feel comfortable. And what I want to emphasize to you is if we want people to come back, right? If we want people not just to come one time, but to come back, then this may be the most important ministry going on. And I know us preachers hate to admit it. But if you had somebody were asked the next day, tell me about your visit to St. Somewhere Episcopal Church, they're more likely to talk about the people they met and the reaction they got, the welcome they got, than they are to talk about the sermon. Music might be up there near the top too. So what I'm talking to you about is extremely, extremely important. And part of the reason it's so important is most people make their at least initial judgment in just the first few minutes, probably 6 or 7 or 8 minutes after they get out of their car. And part of our problem as Episcopalians is the first few minutes of our service are extremely confusing. So that can be a little bit of a problem. And yes, if they have an opinion and afterwards the sermon is outstanding or terrible, or the music is outstanding or terrible, they might change their opinion. But most likely how they feel about, let's say by the time the Old Testament is read, is probably how they're going to go home feeling. And therefore what you do in the first couple minutes is really important. Well, let me begin by saying this role, this ministry is not limited to men. Men or women, doesn't matter. And if there's a child that particularly, one a little bit older who's nearby, that helps too, particularly when a family comes in. I strongly encourage in any church of any size, have 2 people, particularly on Christmas Eve, 2 people ready to fulfill this ministry. And the reason for that is, you probably can only have enough time to talk to one person in any given service, any given event. The person is probably going to walk in, that first timer is probably going to walk in, let's, for the sake of argument, let's say 5 minutes before the service starts. So you've got 2 to 3 minutes maybe to interact with them, because they're not going to want to get into the worship space late or even at the last minute. So they're going to feel antsy if you talk to them too long. And so you don't have time to interact with a second person. And we all hope we'll have at least two guests on any given service. So having 2 people there and ready to go is really important. Now I just used an important word. If you get this, if you get what I'm about to say, then you have about 95% of what you need to get. We don't have any visitor. We will never have a visitor. We'll only have guests. And we don't greet. We host. Now think about your house. Think about that. Think about a delivery person. Maybe a pizza delivery person comes up to your door. All right? They're a visitor in some sense, and you're going to greet them. Now imagine you're holding a barbecue or something for your neighborhood, and you've invited everybody, and somebody you've never met before comes in and knocks on the door. Well, they're not a visitor, they're a guest. And you're not just greeting them, you're hosting them. And spend some time thinking about the difference between those 2 situations, because that's really important. We are not greeting visitors. We are hosting guests. All right, details. And the door opens, of course, and there's a smiling face there to greet the person. Now, I find it's helpful, and this is something I've learned over the years, and I used to do it the other way around. But now I say, my name is Ken, glad you're here. And there's a reason for that. because people will respond to the last phrase. I don't necessarily want them to tell me their name. I mean, I need to know that, and I'll find that out in a minute. But I'd much rather hear their story. And if I say, we're glad you're here, they're more likely to react with, yes, we're new in town, or we've been thinking about coming to this church for a long time, thought we'd come tonight, that kind of thing. Notice also, I didn't say us. I didn't say, glad you are here with us. And you know, everybody's going to say things that they look back on and wish they hadn't said. So don't worry about it too much. But us is very much of an inside outside. You know, you're an outsider. And that's not what we want to do. We want to invite them to be part of us. One of the things I find, and it's maybe just the way I was raised, might not be everybody, but my natural tendency, if it's a couple, is to look at the man. And I know it's very sexist and all those kind of things, but I think most of us tend to do that. So what I've done is I've really worked hard to get in the habit of looking predominantly at the woman, and particularly when I begin and just say, hi, my name is Ken, looking at the woman and then looking at the man and trying to balance that. And part of the reason for that, in all honesty, is the woman's the one who's likely to make the decision about whether they ever come back. Women tend to make the church decisions in most families. Obviously, that's not universal, but it's true an awful lot of time. And there's only one group you want to worry about more, and that's kids. Yes, I said the woman will make the decision, but the fact of the matter, if the kids are happy, they'll be back. If the kids weren't happy, they probably are not coming back. So one of the things I always try to do, and you know, when I can, I get down close to their level and I introduce myself to them. I ask their name, maybe ask something about them, like what school are you going to, or something like that. Just for a moment or so, and then go back to the parents. But make the child feel very special. Now I know what you're thinking, because we've all been there. Well, I'm scared to do this because if I say, glad you're here, then, you know, what happens if this is a founding member? Somebody who's been here for 20 years or more? Well, number one, that's another reason for not using the word us. Glad you are here works no matter who it is. Glad you are here with us suggests they're outsiders. So that's another good reason to avoid that word. But the biggest question is, if somebody does that, well, through my head, my first thought is, well, I've been here 6 years and I've never seen you, but you know, we don't want to respond like that. So make a joke of it. Just say, yes, hi, I'm just terrible with faces and names. I put a name tag on my dog. I'm so bad. Or something like that. Just take the blame and let it go. All right, so we've introduced ourselves. If they haven't given us their name, we've asked for it. Then couple quick things. You just can say, for your information, the restrooms are over here if you need one. And all of them have changing rooms if there's a baby there. And of course, all of yours do have changing tables, right? And now if there's an infant, a really tiny one, if at all possible, have a quiet space available, because if that woman is nursing, and you're not going to phrase it that way, but if that woman is nursing, she may need to sneak out of the service at some point and have some quiet time. So what you can just say is, if the baby gets uncomfortable, that's fine with us. You won't be bothering us, but you know, if you need some quiet space, it's right there. Which, by the way, let me jump back to the kids. When as soon as you see the kids, first thing you say to them is, wow, we love having children in the service. They're more than welcome. So glad you brought them. Make it clear. Make it clear. Good question. Now, you never want to ask, are you new in town? Oh, wow, do not ask that. And I did it, so I know how bad that is. But you never do that, because that can come across as accusatory. Are you new in town? Well, if you're not new in town, why haven't you been at church? Type of thing. People get sensitive about that. But a great question, which accomplishes the same thing, is to say, are you familiar with the Episcopal service? That's an important question anyway, but almost inevitably, whatever they haven't told you about their background, will come out at that point. They'll tell you about it. They'll say, no, I've never been in Episcopal service before, or yeah, I was senior warden at the last church, or whatever, and you'll hear a lot about it. Now, if they say they're not, I strongly encourage you to make a joke about how confusing our service can be. What we're trying to do is take the sting out of the fact they're going to get lost. And again, in the first 3 minutes, have you ever thought about that? You go from the hymnal to the bulletin to the prayer book to the back to the hymnal. Now you have to find the S numbers. Lifelong Episcopalians don't actually keep up with all that. We just kind of stumble through. And for a newcomer who's trying, that's going to be a problem. So we warn them ahead of time, let them know it's okay. The other important thing to do is tell them about communion. And this you need to work with your clergy on, decide exactly how they want it phrased. Now, in my churches, they would all say everyone is welcome to come forward for communion if they'd like. And I'd also always say, if you'd rather not, that's fine. But if you'd just like to come forward for a blessing prayer, the clergy love to be able to do that, or some phrase like that. Also say something about the children. Even some places that would welcome anyone to come forward for communion would not welcome children to do so. So make it clear they're welcome to come forward. Another thing to do is mention your contact form where they can leave their information, however that is, because the second most important thing to making them feel welcome is getting their contact information. Because if we don't have their contact information, if we don't have at least their name and their phone number, we have no influence on whether or not they'll ever return. And frankly, 95% of people don't. And that's because in the modern jargon, we've ghosted them. We've treated them like ghosts. We've ignored them. All right, so we've gone through that. We've gotten the basic information. And it's time. We're walking them over toward the worship area, just again, so they feel comfortable and welcome and everything. We introduce them. You should have an usher there actually handing out the bulletins. A totally different ministry, important ministry, but different. And we introduce them. Hi, Pete, just want you to meet Mary and Joe. They're here for the first time, or, whatever. Please don't say to them what is natural to say. Hope you enjoy the service. We're not there for entertainment. We're not there for entertainment. So just stay out of that altogether. If you want to say anything at all, say, hey, I'll be around here after the service if you have any questions. That's good. They go inside, you stop for a minute and take notes. Everything name, what they told you about their life history, all that kind of thing. Then at the end of the service, during the recessional hymn, you leave to get out to the narthex, make sure you beat them out. When you see them, and you don't want to be diving on them or anything, just kind of casually be nearby. Well, thank you again for coming. That's good enough. Again, not enjoy. And not hope to see you again. Those are pushy. We're not being pushy. Episcopalians aren't pushy. What would I do? Say, thank you for coming. And if there's a child, it's helpful at that point to remember their name and to say, hey, Mark, glad you're here. Just separate, the whole family at once and the child specifically. Children like to be acknowledged. We all like to be acknowledged, but children particularly. They may or may not ask questions. You may or may not have a situation. Now, if this is not Christmas Eve, there's a possibility you have a coffee hour or something. You tell them it's there and offer to walk with them. And if they do that, if you do go to the coffee hour, you make a point of introducing them to a minimum of 2, probably 3 other people. And if there's a lifestyle or something that you can connect with, that's great. In other words, my classic example is a person came in and said he just moved to town. The only thing he really had was his golf clubs. Well, I made a point of introducing them to golfers. Or if they had kids, you'd introduce them to parents, that kind of thing. Try not to you don't want to be the only one they talk to. So if they get talking to somebody, you drift away. Go get your own coffee. All right. Take your notes. You can complete them if anything happens during the coffee hour. And Now I'm a bit on the paranoid side. So I will take my notes and take my camera and make a photograph of them. So I got an extra copy. But make sure those notes get to the office or wherever it's been agreed upon that the notes will go. And then the people can follow up with these people, as the opportunity exists. And they've got a little bit of a head start. I just was helping a church just today about responding to somebody who'd visited, and they had brought two kids. And I just, in the text, just said, and we really enjoyed meeting Albert and Nancy. I don't even remember what their names were, but we acknowledge the children. So anyway, thank you very much for watching. I hope you are overwhelmed that even having two people ready to do it is not enough. Blessings.